Minister, a year into this slaughter, what has changed in the Irish position? After nearly 44,000 dead, including nearly 17,000 children, after more than 100,000 people injured, after 10,000 people missing, buried in wreckage and the rubble, after an expansion of the conflict to Lebanon, nothing has changed. We still maintain normal diplomatic relations with Israel. We still maintain normal travel relations with Israel. We've actually increased our trade in dual-use technology with Israel. We continue to allow military aircrafts carrying bombs and munitions to travel through our airports and airspace, and this government still won't call Israel's actions what they are. This is a genocide. There's no doubt there is no alternative motivation or terminology for Israel's actions. The Israeli state is doing everything within their power to wipe the Palestinian people and the Palestinian state off the map. They have not made any attempt to hide this. Israel has been relentlessly starving, bombing and maiming the captive civilian population in Gaza and the West Bank, doing everything they possibly can to increase the already astronomical loss of life, doing everything they can to ensure that Palestine becomes entirely uninhabitable for the millions of Palestinians who live there. Hospitals bombed and sieged, schools and universities reduced to rubble, refuge camps bombed and set alight, heritage sites and cultural institutions across Gaza have been purposely and cynically destroyed. An ancient harbour from 800 BC, a mosque that was home to rare manuscripts and one of the world's oldest Christian monasteries are just a few of the hundreds of cultural sites that Israel has targeted over the last year. These actions are an attempt not just to wipe out a people, but all memory of a people. All evidence of one of the oldest living cultures in human history. These actions constitute a genocide. So why will this government not say as much? Why are you continuing to hide behind excuses of waiting for an international process to be concluded? Why did you not have any hesitation in using the word genocide in relation to Russia's targeting of civilian infrastructure in Ukraine? What was the difference there? I would have to speculate or guess, is it the position of America and key European allies? It was easy to call Russians' actions what they were when our Western allies were standing beside us, when everyone was working together to implement an EU sanctions regime. But this is different. The European response to the genocide in Palestine has been appalling in its moral hypocrisy. There have been no EU sanctions applied to Israel. Billions in EU trade continues to flow into the Israeli economy, directly funding an apartheid regime, directly funding a genocide. Some countries within the EU take it further, with Germany supplying 30% of Israel's arms. We need to continue to work on an EU level to suspend EU trade, and I appreciate the Taoiseach's efforts to progress this. But how can we be taken seriously in demanding that the EU do everything within their power to take action when we are not willing to do the same? The Occupied Territories Bill was first introduced to the Dáil in 2019 by Fianna Fáil TD. But as soon as Fianna Fáil entered government, it disavowed the bill and said it was unconstitutional. Fine Gael, on the other hand, have always been opposed to the bill. With just days left in office, the government admitted the bill can be enacted, but it claims that it has run out of time. It is a cynical and transparent excuse. If this government wanted to pass the Occupied Territories Bill, they would have. If you were genuine about needing extra time to pass it, you would have accepted our offer to use this time slot and Sinn Féin's yesterday to pass it. Or you could have kept the Dáil in session until you passed it, as you did for loads of other pieces of legislation that you deemed a priority. But the Occupied Territories Bill, it seems, is not a priority for this government, is it? And if it's not a priority in the face of genocide, it never will be. On Tuesday, the Ditch published some very concerning information. The US ambassador to Ireland contacted the government last month to warn about consequences if the Occupied Territories Bill were enacted. Apparently, the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach's office were warned about the economic uncertainty it would cause for some 1,000 US businesses based here. This stems from a US law which prohibits companies from complying with unsanctioned foreign boycotts. The ambassador then offered to connect with the Attorney General and government enterprise teams with relevant offices in Washington for discussions to ensure the best outcome for the legislation. The government has still not clarified whether the Attorney General or any other government official or minister contacted counterparts in the United States to get advice on this. And they've still not answered the crucial question. Is this the real reason, part of the reason, why the government is refusing to enact this legislation? Are you refusing to implement domestic legislation because you're more concerned about a backlash from the United States, Israel's largest arms dealer, than the genocide unfolding before our eyes? If this is the cowardice shown by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party when faced with resistance from the Biden administration, why would we have any faith you will take a stronger stance against more hostile and vindictive administration under Donald Trump? This is legislation the public are demanding in their thousands every week on the streets. They want to see the Occupied Territories Bill enacted now. We cannot wait until all our allies are lined up beside us before we act, because the Palestinian people do not have that luxury of time. And we have a legal responsibility under the Genocide Convention to do everything in our power to stop a genocide. Instead, we're nearly facilitating it. We know Shannon Airport and the Irish airspace are being used to transport bombs and weapons to Israel. We know this not from the Minister for Transport, not as the result of any inspections of military planes in Shannon, but from investigative work from the ditch. And since these issues have been made public, government don't seem to have taken any action at all to prevent further flights. Countries and airlines are trampling over our neutrality and our sovereignty because it's convenient for them, because cutting through our airspace means a smaller fuel bill, and crucially they're doing this because they know there'll be no consequences. They know this government will look the other way, because they always have. This position is not credible. It never has been. We cannot, as a state, claim to be military neutral when we are facilitating the passage of weapons through Ireland. By failing to act to prevent this, the government makes Ireland complicit in the slaughter of the Palestinian people, complicit in a genocide this government refuses to name. Enough is enough. For 75 years now, there has been no accountability for the crimes committed by Israel against the Palestinian people, for the denial of their basic rights, the seizure of land, and all of the brutal injustices of an apartheid government. We must take every action we can as a state to ensure that Israel is held accountable. Symbolic gestures are valuable and have meaning, but we can do more than that. Ireland can suspend trade, travel and diplomatic relations. Ireland can end the use of Shannon Airport by the US military. Ireland can stop the export of dual-use goods to Israel. And we can call this horror out for what it is, a genocide of the Palestinian people. But at every opportunity, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have failed to take action. And if you haven't acted to date, why on earth would anyone believe that you'll do it in the future?